tell us about Maximilian Kolbe. How did he develop such a strong devotion to the Virgin Mary? And you could not speak long enough. I want to hear all of it.
De Maria num cum satis, and Saint Maximilian Kolbe is the saint of the Immaculate. So I know you like him, right, Matt? Is that right?
Love Maximilian.
You love him,
of course.
How did you get to know him? What do you love about Saint Maximilian?
Well,
Kolbe?
obviously everybody knows his heroic decision at Auschwitz, where he gave his life for Franciszek Gajowniczek, the prisoner he didn't even know. We know about how he prayed, perhaps heard the confessions of, in the starvation bunker. We know this heroic story, so that alone is cool. Secondly, his beard is fantastic, and he's a handsome man. And then I would read him, and I was really impressed with what a philosopher he was.
Yes.
I love philosophy.
Good.
I wish that I was more kind of tickled by theology, and I know I should be, right?
Yeah.
But when I read a good philosopher, I am in the grip. And I reading his works, I realized that, wow, this man's very logical.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I start reading about what he had to say about the Blessed Virgin Mary, and I just found it very compelling. I suppose that's what I'd say.
You know, not a lot of people probably know that when he was in Auschwitz, so he gave his life heroically for that prisoner, but during that time, he was actually giving conferences to the prisoners.
Wow.
And he was talking about the Immaculate Conception, Our Lady in relationship to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Matt, who does that? Who does that? But St. Maximilian Kolbe was so convinced about this beautiful truth, and it inspired him to give his life to this prisoner. You know, truth, charity, and truth, and that's what we see in St. Maximilian Kolbe. But the Immaculate Conception was the mystery that he contemplated throughout his entire life. And he received a mystical intuition to who the Immaculate Conception is. And he articulates this in a way that nobody has ever done before, you know. So his consecration, his Marian consecration, he actually talks about it in terms of the incorporation of the mystery of the Immaculate Conception. Because the Immaculate Conception, as St. Maximilian Kolbe would say, is the mystery of her person. There's only one Immaculate Conception, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Some people might say, hey, look, this is based on, his theology is more based on private revelation, right? Lourdes, etc., etc. But the reality is, it goes beyond that. Why? Because in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it says that one of the ways that we grow in our understanding of the truths of the faith is the contemplation and study by believers, those things that the contemplation of these mysteries in their heart. And this is what St. Maximilian actually did. Because remember, St. Maximilian Kolbe is a Franciscan. So the way he did theology was in a Franciscan way. Okay?
And what does that mean? What does that look like?
So St. Anthony of Padua, the doctor of the church, once wrote to St. Francis of Assisi, "Can I teach theology?" St. Francis replied, "Yes, just as long as you don't extinguish the spirit of prayer and devotion." In the Franciscan tradition, theology is a means to loving God more. As St. Bonaventure would say, ut boni fiamus, to be good, to become good, to know and to love God more. How does that happen? St. Bonaventure would say there's three modes of doing theology: the symbolic mode, the academic mode, and then the mystical mode. The symbolic mode is based on the symbol, the creed. So any believer who receives the gift of faith and professes the faith, the creed that the church professes, is a theologian, St. Bonaventure would say, because divine revelation is entrusted to the church. And whoever receives the gift of faith and expresses it and professes it is a true theologian. And at the same time, those truths of faith can be deepened through the academic mode. So this is the typical way that we think of theology. Fides querens intellectum, fides et ratio, faith seeking understanding. This is what happens in universities and seminaries, where we take the truths of the faith and then through reason and faith and reason, we deepen them and articulate it in an academic form. There's the third mode, the mystical mode. This is not only faith and reason, but the gifts of the Holy Spirit. The believer, the mystic, the theologian in the third mystical mode deepens these truths of faith, not only through faith and reason which is limited, but through the gifts of the Holy Spirit that helps them penetrate the truths of the faith in a depth that they cannot do alone. And more, they experience it. They taste it, sapiencia. They taste the mysteries of faith. That's what St. Thomas of Aquinas says about wisdom. They taste and experience the truths of the faith. So what St. Maximilian does is he's actually a theologian in all three senses. Because in 1854, the dogma of the Immaculate Conception is proclaimed as dogma. So he bases it on the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. What happens in 1858? Our Lady says and reveals her name. I am the Immaculate Conception.
You guys have got to check out 7 Weeks Coffee. They are pro-life, mold-free, organic. The coffee is delicious. Go to 7weekscoffee.com. Click the link in the description. And also down there, you'll figure out how you can save 25% off your first order. 7weekscoffee.com.
St. Maximilian prayed, contemplated that revelation of her name. I am the Immaculate Conception. What does that mean? What does that mean? Who are you,
right.
O Immaculate Conception?
Because she didn't say, I was immaculately conceived.
Exactly. She said, I am the Immaculate Conception.
And am I right that Bernadette was unaware of the dogma that had been proclaimed a few years earlier?
Absolutely. She was a simple peasant. And when Our Lady revealed her name, she had to keep repeating it as she was going to her pastor. Because she was like, what is this about? What is the Immaculate Conception? I am the Immaculate Conception. And then she says it to her pastor. I am the Immaculate Conception. Who are you, O Immaculate Conception? So he contemplated that throughout his whole life. And just before his arrest, he gets a mystical intuition and an answer to his question. And then he articulates that mystical gift into the second mode, the academic mode. How does he do it? In simple terms, this is what he does. He contemplates the mystery of God ad intra, the intra-Trinitarian life, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And he says that we know by faith that there are 2 eternal processions. From the Father eternally begets the Son. The Father and Son eternally spirate the Holy Spirit. And what he does is he hones in on the second eternal procession. Then he says, Father and Son are divine persons. So we can call that spiration a conception.
The Holy Spirit, you mean? Is that what you mean? From the Father and Son?
Yes.
I see.
Father and Son spirate the Holy Spirit.
What does the word spirate mean?
That's a theological term for the second eternal procession.
Right.
The spiration of the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
So the Son is begotten, eternally begotten. The Holy Spirit, there's a spiration of the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a theological term.
Yeah, I've heard it before.
Yeah.
And obviously language breaks down as we start trying to understand this. But the point maybe for our listeners is that from all eternity,
from all eternity,
the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have existed as God.
Yeah. So St. Maximilian contemplates that. And he says that the Father and the Son are divine persons. So that spiration can be called a conception. proper to persons. The Father and Son are perfect, so that spiration can be called immaculate. The Father and Son spirate the Holy Spirit from all eternity. So we can call that spiration uncreated, immaculate, conception. So for St. Maximilian, when Our Lady reveals her name, I am the Immaculate Conception, he sees that as a deep, ineffable, mysterious, spousal union between the uncreated Immaculate Conception and the created Immaculate Conception. She is the spouse of the Holy Spirit. And he says that title, as good as it is so weak to express that ineffable union. He actually says it's a quasi
Here we go.
incarnation of the Holy Spirit. Matt, this is the max you can go.
Nice.
What does that imply? It implies that the Holy Spirit, who is, as St. Louis de Montfort would say, is unfruitful in the life of God.
Yeah.
Why? Because there's no other persons that proceed from him. Is fruitful outside of God, only in the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Okay, so let me see if I can get this right, and then we can excavate it a little bit. So from all eternity, the Father gives himself to the Son gives himself to the Father, the Holy Spirit is, we could use the language of conception, right? The Immaculate Conception.
Yes.
And then in time, we have this Trinity of sorts, not the Holy Trinity, but a different Trinity of sorts, where the Holy Spirit gives himself to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Mary receives this, gives it back, as it were, and from that we have Jesus Christ. So when I say Trinity, people hopefully will understand what I mean. I'm not saying we have another Trinity over here, but we have Trinity in the sense that we have three individuals again. So Father, Son brings about the Holy Spirit, and then Holy Spirit, Mary brings about the Incarnation.
Oof. Now I can go in a cave and just contemplate that for all my whole life.
Okay, some people may have spat their coffee out across their laptop or phone when you said quasi-incarnation of the Holy Spirit. So what does that not mean, and what does it mean?
It does not mean she is the incarnation of the Holy Spirit. That's why that quasi,
very important.
Very important. Very important. Because if you take that out, that's heresy. But quasi safeguards that deep, mysterious, ineffable spousal union between two persons, divine person and human person. They are not one. However, they are so closely united, and their will is but one, that we can say that she is a quasi-incarnation of the Holy Spirit. She is the mediatrix of all graces. St. Louis de Montfort would say, the Holy Spirit never acts without his spouse, because he is fruitful in her. Divine maternity, he is fruitful in her. By the power of the Holy Spirit, conceives the Word incarnate. But she is also fruitful in her spiritual maternity, in giving grace to souls. She is the mother in the order of grace. So her maternity derives from the fact that she is the spouse of the Holy Spirit.
Thanks very much for watching that clip. You can click the link below if you want to watch the full interview, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.